Financial Beginnings has been around since around 2006, and our goal and our whole reason for existence is to provide no-cost, free personal finance education to schools, community groups, individuals across the state of Oregon. And I'm just really excited to be here. I think personal finance is one of those things that everyone needs. They need to, we all need to kind of understand our own personal finances, understand how to navigate complex and often exclusionary systems in the financial world. And we don't get that information in school or in our day-to-day life. So we're trying to fill the gap and meet that need. Today, we're going to be talking about goals, goal setting, which is integral to then creating budgets and saving plans and spending plans. Or you could say that budgets are integral to goal setting and achieving your financial goals. And then we're going to talk a little bit at the end about different financial services, how to access them, and how to choose the right financial service for you. So that's either a bank or a credit union, which bank or which credit union, and what to look for when you're shopping those services. Oh, I'm having trouble getting my slide to go. There we go. Perfect. So real quick, Lenora, you can answer this question in the chat if you want, or you can just, choose to participate as much as you want to. But so what would we do if we won the lottery? And I think a lot of common responses are, buy a house, buy a car, pay off debt, help out your family members, donate it, travel, maybe start a business. And we kind of have to ask ourselves, like, what are keeping us from doing those things, barring winning the lottery? And I think a lot of the time, we don't have that lump sum of money right away. So we think that those things are unattainable, buying a house, buying a car. But it's our philosophy, and we think that, those things are achievable. It's just you can't get it right away. It'll take time. It'll take some thoughtful commitment, and it'll take some planning and forethought. And so when we're talking about, all those things, buying a car, buying a house, traveling, those are all goals that we set for ourselves. And when we're kind of thinking about our financial goals, we want to structure them in ways that help us achieve those goals and help us stay on track. So at Financial Beginnings, we really like to use the SMART goal system. SMART goals like I said, it structures our goals and kind of grounds them in a way that we can turn them from these theoretical things into actionable concepts and actionable goals. So when we're looking at SMART goals, we want them to be specific. So what will you achieve with that goal by achieving that goal, and who will benefit from that goal, from achieving that goal? You want to look at what specific thing will that goal accomplish, and why is that goal important? And is that goal related to covering expenses associated with an expected or unexpected life event? So that goal, you need to define that goal and flesh that goal out. And then it needs to be measurable. So this is really important. You have to be able to quantify that goal. So how much, how many, and how will you know when that goal is done? The goal needs to be attainable. It needs to be realistic. I think maybe all of us want to live in a huge mansion in Beverly Hills, but that's not realistic. So we have to set grounded, realistic goals for ourselves. You want to make sure that goal is relevant. Is it something that you really want? Does it align with your beliefs and values? And is now the right time to do it? And then this last one is really, really important. Kind of the most important part is it needs to be time-based. You need to set time parameters for your goal. So when you're creating your spending and savings plan, you can set a time frame and kind of chunk it out, so you know that in a year, in 5 years, in 10 years, that's when I'm going to achieve this goal, and I'm going to structure my budget and savings plan with that time frame in mind. And so, like I said, time-based, the time-based component is very, very important, probably the most important part about the SMART goals. And so when we're looking at the different time frames for a goal, you want to we like to chunk it out into these three categories. So there's short-term goals. This is a vacation, a new smartphone. This is creating an emergency, a rainy day fund. These are all sort of short-term goals. And These goals, they're important, but I think, and all of these things can this is flexible. So a vacation, you might spend 5 years saving for a vacation, depending on your income. For a new smartphone, you might spend 5 years, 2 years, 3 years. So this is all very flexible, but we kind of like to chunk these out. Intermediate goal, I wouldn't really put buying a home in an intermediate term. Intermediate, we define as 1 to 5 years. But I think with housing market the way it is, and just kind of the how difficult it is to buy a home in this day and age, I'd say buying a home is more of a long-term goal. But getting married, purchasing a car, again, vacation could be in this intermediate term. Those are all kind of, 1 to 5 years it takes. Long-term, these are, 5+, this might be your whole career, saving for retirement, saving for your children's college fund. Buying a home may take you 6 years to get the 20% down payment for a home. So you really want to kind of, when you're thinking about the time base, like what is that time? Is it short-term, is it intermediate, or is it long-term? So then, I think, so once you have kind of your goal set and you're thinking about, well, what time frame, or this, is kind of a question you're going to ask yourself when you're thinking about what time frame your goals fits within, is how much will it cost? So for education, an associate's degree, that might cost you $10,000, $15,000. Bachelor's degree, depending on if you're in-state, out-of-state, might be $25,000, $30,000. So if you're saving up for your children's retirement, or I'm sorry, not children's retirement, children's college fund, you might need to have $30,000 put away. And that might take 20 years, 30 years, 40 years to save. Getting married, weddings can cost anywhere between $1,000 to $10,000 to $15,000. So it's a pretty large chunk of change that you have to save. Buying a home, like I said, I think depending on where you live, it'll change. But I know in Portland, where I live, it's $600,000 is kind of around a typical home price, $400,000, and you need 20% down payment. So that's going to be, roughly $40,000 that you need saved for that down payment. And that's going to be a lot of money that you got to put away. And so you got to start thinking about, how am I going to reach that goal through a budget and savings plan? And how long is that going to take me? It might take you 5 years, 10 years. But the point is, you're setting that goal and you're sticking to a budget that's going to help you achieve that goal. Lenora, have you ever created a budget? And again, you don't need to answer if you don't want to. But I think a lot of people, I think we all talk about budgeting and we hear budget, but yeah, that's the main point, is it's hard to stick to a budget. I think we all a lot of people know what a budget is. We know kind of what goes into a budget, but sticking to a budget is the hardest part to do. And so that's why creating an attainable and a realistic budget and trying to stick to those SMART goals is so important, because that helps create goals and a budget that's going to align with your values. That's something that you will be consistent with and stick with, and you'll have to maybe stick with for up to 5 years, 10 years. So the basic components of a budget, it's a pretty simple math equation, right? It's your income, so your earned income, what's given to you, what's gifted, minus your expenses, and that's your net income or your net loss. So you're either in the positive, 5 minus 2 equals 3, or you're in the negative, 5 minus 6 equals -1. However you want to chunk out the equation. It's pretty simple. It's not that complicated when you're looking at the bare bones of a budget. It gets complicated when you start adding in all your expenses and all of your income. And if your income or expenses are variable, you might be a tipped worker who can't rely on a consistent income week over week or month over month. Or bills, we know that those change and fluctuate on a monthly basis. I know that energy prices, so gas prices, electricity just increased a bunch. And those are things that are really hard to plan for. So The budget in its core is very simple, but when you start applying it to your life, it can get complex and really hard to track. So we're talking about income real quick. There's three different types of income. There is earned income, which is your wages. If you're operating a business, that's your profit. I think for most of us, it's your wages that you earn on a biweekly basis or a monthly basis. But it could be operating a business or your portfolio, which is the next category. Portfolio is if you have stocks and you're getting a dividend, or you're maybe every year you're taking out a little bit of your stock. But I think for most of us, we're not relying, or you can really have access to portfolio income. I think for if any of us are investing, we're investing in an IRA, we're investing in funds that we can't touch until we reach retirement age. So for portfolio, I'd say that's a little less in the realm of what we're talking about. Gifted or loaned, this is money that we have access to that can count as our income. It can be student loans, it can be credit cards, it can be car loans. But in the end, that money, you're borrowing it from your future self. So it's income now, but it's taking money from your future self because you're loaning your past self or your current self money. Oops, apologies. Then different types of expenses. Like I said, there's some that are fixed that we can predict every month. There's rent, there's car insurance, there's loan payments, there's a phone bill, but even your car insurance can be variable. Car insurance, you could be paying by mile, so you don't really know how much you're going to be paying each month. You can predict it, but it's not fixed necessarily. I think a lot of our expenses and most of our expenses are variable. So that's food, that's clothing, that's gas. Gas prices change all the time. Taxes, somewhat variable. I think you can expect that there's going to be a certain percentage out of each paycheck, but still, if you're a tipped worker, that amount might change pretty frequently. Entertainment, and then there's bills in here too, which it's not listed. I mean, bills, like I said, change all the time. So you really have to kind of, when you're creating your budget, you want to put all your expenses down and then categorize them into fixed or variable. And the fixed, you can kind of just put them in your budget, leave them there, but the variable, you're going to have to put a little more forethought into and kind of come back to, and then maybe plan for them to be more expensive than they're going to be, so that you can maybe predict how much you're going to have to pay each month, pay a little extra in your budget. And so when each month, when you kind of break down your budget and see what your net is, it's going to maybe a little higher because you budgeted a little bit more for those variable expenses. And then so when we're looking at expenses too, we want to kind of categorize it into another way, which is this a need or is this a want? And, when we're categorizing needs versus wants, this changes person to person. My need might not be someone else's need, and someone else's want might be, my want, or someone else's need might be my want. Money and purchases are very emotional and very personal. And so when we're talking about this, we're not trying to tell anyone what they need. Maybe someone really does need that cup of coffee each morning, and that's just fine. We're not going to say that that's an expense that they can cut out easily. But it's worth kind of taking the time, sitting with our purchases and asking ourselves, is this something I truly want, or is this something that I could potentially cut out in order to balance my budget? All right, so we kind of talked about this already. We looked at the equation of what a budget is. It's that income minus expenses equals net income or loss. But so when we're kind of starting to create a budget, when we're sitting down to plan one, like I said, choosing a time period. So I think a lot of the time, most of us will create budgets on a month-to-month basis. Bills are paid each month, rent is paid each month. We might get paid once a month, or we might get paid twice a month. But I think a month is probably the time period that most of us use when setting a budget, and probably the easiest to keep track of, since those bills come on a monthly basis for the most part. So you sit down, you choose your time period, let's choose a month. Then we want to project our income and expenses. So like I said, you might not know exactly how much money you're making each month if you're a tipped worker. It's useful to, on your income, underestimate, and on your expenses, overestimate. So, you maybe on the high end, you get paid $500 every 2 weeks, but on the low end, you might get paid $400 every 2 weeks. It's worthwhile to use that low end figure. So if you do get paid on the high end, and you do get 500, you'll have budgeted for less and you'll have extra money left over at the end. Same with expenses. Overestimate your expenses. If your electricity bill is usually around $100, but can get as high as 150, I'd budget for 150. And then at the end of the month, you might have some left over. But if it does end up being 150, you planned for it, you budgeted for it, and you're ready for it in your budget. But at the end of the day, your income needs to exceed your expenses, or else you're going to be losing money. And that can either be you taking out debt that you don't want to take out, using your credit card more than you want to. It could be getting behind on rent payments, which can lead to, eviction, or it can lead to wage garnishment. So just kind of making sure you're in the black, as they say, that you're not in the red, is very, very important, but not always possible. But it is very important. And that's why when you're looking at needs versus wants, you kind of want to analyze where you can cut costs, what expenses can you maybe forego paying, and not face extremely upfront negative consequences right away. So like I said, where do we cut expenses? Needs versus wants. Not all of these things are possible, but there are things that we can do on a personal level that can help us cut expenses. I know that, buying a generic brand rather than buying the name brand is an easy way to cut expenses. A lot of the times it's the same exact product. For medicine, for pharmaceuticals, for over-the-counter stuff, the Kroger brand has the same active ingredients, the same everything. It just has a different package. It doesn't have that name brand on it, but it might be a few bucks cheaper. Shopping at low-cost retailers is really important. Grocery outlet or things like that have, a lot of the times, the quality of the products and the produce are just the same as maybe the Fred Meyer's, but it's cheaper and it'll save you money in the end. Using coupons, it's important. It's hard though, I think it takes a lot of work. It's extra work to use coupons and find the right coupons for what you want and cut them out and, bring them in and do that extra work into your, as you're preparing to shop. But it is a way to save money if you want to. But then limiting eating out is really important too. That's something that we all can do. Eating at home. I know with inflation and rising food costs, eating at home is more and more expensive. But eating at home will always be less expensive than eating out. Eating out's easier. Eating out maybe is more convenient and maybe tastes better sometimes, but it is eating in and making your own food, and meal planning can be really important for saving money. Saving money on transportation. If you are a renter and you have renter's insurance and you have a car and you have car insurance, but they're with different companies, you can maybe think about combining those with the same company, so you get a discount for combining policies. Using public transportation is a way. It's not always possible. Public transit, depending on where you live, isn't accessible, but if it is accessible where you are and you do have the extra time to use public transit, it can save you a lot of money because gas is very expensive. And then you could always carpool if you have a coworker who is, arrives at your job at the same exact time, who lives somewhat close to you. You can carpool, but then again, that's not always possible. You can save money on entertainment. I think there's a lot of streaming options where you can maybe just buy one streaming service instead of buying cable. You can use things like Groupon, which allow you to because we all need to still entertain ourselves and treat ourselves in some sense. So if we want to do something fun or go on a date night, see if there's any Groupon options that allow you to, save a little bit of money and get those experiences on a discount. And then traveling at off-peak times is huge. I think we saw in this December, traveling was wild. If you want to go on a vacation and you travel by plane, traveling was very, very difficult and very expensive during the holidays. So maybe, you go at a time when not as many people are traveling, maybe at the start of the school year. As people are coming back to school and not going on vacation, you go on your little vacation then. But again, not always possible because maybe you have a kid in school who needs to go to school too. So these are just suggestions, but not rules to live by, because we all have different life circumstances and different things will help us cut expenses. Got to think about budget busters. Budget busters are things that don't really seem like a big expense at the time, but add up over time. So this is, buying that coffee in the morning, $4 at Starbucks rather than making it at home. That's going to add up over time to a lot of money. Putting unexpected expenses or not putting unexpected expenses in your budget can really break your budget. You want to kind of, maybe if you know that your car is an older car and that it might break down at any moment, maybe in your budget for car repair, even though you're not paying for that car repair each month, you're budgeting for it and you're putting some money away. And I think that kind of leads into another idea that the first thing we should all budget for and save for is an emergency fund if something like that happens. If there's unexpected vehicle expense, unexpected healthcare, just anything unexpected. If your computer breaks down and you work through your computer, or you're going to school through your computer and you need a new computer, that's going to be really hard on your budget if you weren't planning for that, or if you didn't have any money put away for that. So a rainy day fund is the first thing we always tell people to save for and to budget for. Not following your budget is the biggest budget buster I think there is. Not tracking your expenses in your budget. That's really tough. And again, that is the hardest part about creating a budget, is sticking to it. And especially if you have long-term goals, sticking to it for a long time. And then again, like I said, not including what if scenarios. So when you're creating your budget, there's lots of ways you can track. There's the old school way of doing the check register or doing a checkbook and balancing the checkbook. I don't think a lot of us use that type of budget tool anymore, but it is still available. Even just the pen and paper is a great budget tool. Just writing things out, keeping track of it. It's harder because you need to update it manually. If you're doing pen and paper, you're doing a checkbook, you have to sit down at the end of each week or the end of each day and keep your receipts, write down what you spent, write down what income you had and balance it that way. Excel spreadsheets also really good. It kind of is the same idea as pen and paper, just digital, creating columns with different spending categories, tracking your purchases, tracking your income, and then just doing the math, the simple calculator math of income minus expense equals what you have left over. But in this digital day and age, with lots of fancy apps and all of us have smartphones for the most part, we recommend Mint as a great way to a great tool to budget. We're not paid by Mint at all. I'll just put that out there, but we think it's a really good free tool for people to use that connects to your bank account or your credit union account. So it tracks your purchases for you. You can create spending categories in there, and it does all of that behind the scene maintenance work for you. So really all you have to do is check it and see what your spending categories are at or your spending limits are at for certain categories, and just try to follow that. And it'll give you notifications if you go over in one category, or if you have, if you're making a lot of purchases in one category and you're not budgeted for it, it'll not shame you, but it'll tell you, hey, you're spending too much in this category right now. Oh, hi, Olga. Mint is free, Lenora. Oh, I'm going to send. So here is, for the new attendees, here is the workbook that we have. It's downloadable via that Google Drive link. There's some activities that you can do following the workshop. And it's meant to be done after the workshop. Just some good activities that help you set goals and help you start to create the first steps of a budget, but not actually create a full budget within the workbook. Mint sell your spending data? That is a possibility. A lot of these free apps, that's how they make money, is they sell your data. So if you're not comfortable with your spending data being out there and being used by third parties, I would maybe not use Mint. I can't answer that question definitively, though. And Excel spreadsheets, what do I think about them? I think they're a great tool if you're pretty savvy with Excel, and you don't even need to be that savvy with Excel to get a lot of use out of an Excel spreadsheet budget. You can kind of program it so when you input in one cell, you input an expense, it'll kind of do all the math behind the scenes and then tell you in this cell down here what your current leftover income is for that month. And we actually have a really good budget Excel spreadsheet that if anyone wants it, I'll put my email in the chat after this and I can send you that Excel spreadsheet that's already created for a budget. It's got actually a bit more than I think most people need when they're thinking about creating their budget, but I can definitely send that to y'all and you can use, I'll just send you an email with a little more information on how to use the budget spreadsheet. So, but honestly, when we're looking at how to keep track of your money, the most important thing is one that you're going to use the most. It doesn't, it's, again, sticking to the budget is the hardest part. So choosing a tracking system that's right for you is the most important thing. The thing that I stick to the most might be a paper and pen. It might be a check register. It might be really helpful for me to be really intentional and sit down with that and balance that checkbook every week. And that might be what helps me stay on track. But for some people, it might be, I don't want to think about it as much as I want to just have it there and running in the background. So I might use that Mint app. Just whatever works for you best. Again, yeah, whichever tool is right for you is the best budgeting tool. So that's those are the core components of a budget. Again, we're not going to get into how to create a budget specifically. We're not going to actually create budgets ourselves, but that's the framework that you need to create a budget and create something that's going to work for you and help you achieve your long-term goals or short-term goals. But now when we're talking about budgeting and income and expenses, we want to also talk about how we're going to actually spend that money and how that money is going to come to us and how that cash flow is going to work. And so most of us, I think some people still stick to just cash and maybe have a little bit of cash in a shoebox under their bed, and that's just fine. But in this digital day and age, with everything being plastic and everyone having debit cards and credit cards, choosing a financial institution is really important to keep your money safe. And just to be able to, again, if you're using Mint, it links to your bank account. So it makes this whole budget process a lot easier. So banks and credit unions, again, both safe places, both are insured. So your money, if it's in there, up to $250,000, that money is safe. So it can't be stored. If the bank is robbed, that money is not going away. If the bank shuts down and goes bankrupt, your money is federally insured. So you're not going to lose that money. Banks are privately owned or publicly traded for a profit. So their goal is to make money. That said, there's not much difference in a lot of ways between a credit union and a bank, but a credit union is not for profit. They're not making money off of your money. There's no membership required for a bank, but with a credit union, you need to be a member. A lot of the times that's just opening up an account, same as a bank. You don't have to pay a membership fee to be part of most credit unions. Banks pay federal income tax and credit unions do not pay federal income tax. There's also this new term that's coming out called a neobank. Neobanks are digital-only banks that operate exclusively online, mostly via a mobile app, but they don't have physical locations you can visit. So you might choose a bank, you might choose a credit union, or you might choose a neobank. So when we're looking at shopping financial institutions, you kind of want to ask yourself a few questions. First is, what benefits does this financial institution offer? Is there a minimum balance that I have to keep in order to keep my account open? Do they waive monthly fees? Do they have monthly fees? Do they have higher interest rates on savings? So if I have money in a savings account, what interest am I earning on that in that savings account on my money? And do they have lower interest rates on loans? That's a big part, because most of the time, when we're going to take out a car loan or a home loan, we're going to shop with our financial institution where we have a bank account already. And then we want to ask ourselves, what are the fees and policies? What is the cost of overdraft? Overdraft fees are a huge thing that have come on the scene in the past, 15 years, where if you swipe your debit card for a $10 transaction, but you only have $5 in your bank account, not only are they going to make you pay that $5 that you didn't have in your bank account back, they're going to charge you around a $30 to $35 overdraft fee. So that $5 that you didn't have, it turns into $35, $40. So you kind of want to ask, does this bank have overdraft fees? Do they have overdraft protection where you can keep a little bit of money in your savings account? And if you swipe your debit card and your checking account is almost empty, it'll just pull right from your savings account rather than overdrafting your checking account. And a lot of institutions don't have that set up. You have to tell them, I want overdraft protection. And you put that money away in your savings account and you'll be protected, and you won't have to pay that overdraft fee if you do overdraft. But that does require you having money in your savings account that'll kind of back that overdraft, that'll make up for the money that you didn't have in your checking account. You want to ask, is there a monthly fee? Some institutions have, maintenance fees, account maintenance fees. We recommend trying to avoid fees at all costs when you're shopping your financial institutions. So if they do have a monthly fee, I maybe look at a different financial institution where you don't have to pay to bank with them. And then, are there fees associated with minimum balances? Again, minimum balances, maybe a bank has a minimum balance requirement, but then has a lot of advantageous services that they provide. But for the most part, again, we say, look for places with no minimum balance fees and no minimum balances and no monthly fees. And then the third, this is really important, is what kind of type of accessibility does it offer? If you're a person who likes to go into your bank, cash your check at the bank, put it right in physically, you're going to want to have a place that is close to you, that has maybe a lot of locations that are accessible. Is there convenient ATM locations where you can maybe draw your money out easily and not pay ATM fees? But then if you're someone who doesn't really care about physical locations, you might ask, is there online banking? Can I deposit a check through my phone? So those are sort of how accessible is that financial institution to me on a day-to-day basis? And then another, just kind of the last category, is what is important to you when it comes to what services that financial institution offers. Are there discounts for students or for young adults? So if you have a child who's going to be opening up a bank account pretty soon, is there kind of deals that they can get? Are there options for them to open up a checking or a savings account? Again, locations, hours of operations, online or mobile, and fees. So kind of like what's important to me when I'm choosing a bank or a credit union, and then assessing those first three and saying what type of fees, where is it accessible, does it have mobile banking, and then what benefits do I get as a member when it comes to interest rates on savings or on loans. Other accounts and services that you can access at banks. So there's the checking account, there's the savings account, which I think a lot of us know about, but then there's certificates of deposit as well, which are they went out of style for a little bit, but I think are making a resurgence because CD interest rates are increasing. So a certificate of deposit is, you will go to a bank and you'll say, I'm going to give you $500. And it's kind of like putting $500 in your savings account. But you can't touch that $500 for a set amount of time. And then after that amount of time, you get that money back plus the interest it earned. So before, historically, the interest rates hovered around like 0.3%. So you weren't going to make a lot of money, and you weren't going to have access to your money for quite a long time, or for however long that term is. Recently, interest rates have increased to around, I think they're in the 3 to 4% range, which it's something. If you put away, $100 for 6 months, that's going to be $104 you get back, which doesn't seem like a lot, but if you have a little bit of extra money over time, that starts to accumulate. There's safe deposit boxes, which if you have valuables that you want to store, and you're shopping financial institutions, you'll want to look for a place that has safe deposit boxes that are maybe low cost or minimal cost or no cost to store your valuables and keep them safe within the bank. Again, overdraft protection, super important when you're looking at shopping services. Each overdraft item, again, can cost around $30 to $40. And it's just really important to kind of protect yourself from that situation, especially if you know that you're kind of running through your balances on a regular basis and you're not checking your account balances on a regular basis. You want to have overdraft protection to ensure that you're not paying those fees. But then that's also another part so if you're just going through your balance on a regular basis and you're kind of getting down to zero pretty frequently, maybe having online banking is also really important so that you can just check your balance regularly on your phone, maybe each day, or whenever you're about to make a purchase. And so if a bank doesn't have online banking, you have to actually go into that bank to know how much money you have. So regardless of what financial institution you choose, it's your responsibility to maintain your account. So that's checking for errors, that's checking for unauthorized charges. So if you want to kind of check it on a frequent basis to know that, hey, maybe someone stole your credit card or your debit card information and is making purchases, and you might not, if you're not checking regularly, you might not know until you swiped your card and it gets declined. So kind of checking that and making sure that you are on top of that so you can communicate to the bank if you've been a victim of identity theft and someone is making unauthorized charges. But also it's important just to keep track of your spending habits, to be looking at your bank account balance to kind of know, when am I spending more money? What am I spending more money on? And as you're constructing your budget, kind of looking at categorizing those things, looking at those things, noticing trends, and trying to at least just manage your spending and cut costs where you can, and just make sure that your budget stays in the black and stays positive. If you do have a problem with your account, if you do notice that maybe there's an unauthorized charge or you deposited a $1,000 check and it only showed up as $100 in your balance, contact your bank as soon as possible. Write down the name of the person who helped you, offer a solution. So if I think a lot of the time the bank will offer the solution. They want to help you, the bank or the credit union. They're there to provide a service. They don't want to lose you as a customer. So they will do their best to help you. You just have to communicate to them that something is off or something's wrong with your account. If you don't like the solution, it's worthwhile to maybe ask to talk to a manager or just express dissatisfaction in a respectful way, but to try to just get the outcome that you want. Especially when it comes to fraud. I know that credit unions and banks are really on top of trying to get you your money back if you didn't spend that money. And they will do everything in their ability to investigate the purchase and then reimburse you. If you are a victim of fraud, it does take around 3 to 4 weeks to get your money back. For credit cards will just reimburse your balance immediately if you report fraud, but for debit cards, it's going to take a while. So even though you will eventually get your money back, in most cases, if you're a victim of fraud, it's still is a challenge because you will be without however much money until they actually investigate that purchase and then are able to confirm that you did not spend it. Another really important part when we're checking our account balance is, hold on, drink a sip of water, is can you believe your account balance? I think in this, a lot of purchases, especially debit purchases, are almost instantaneous, but sometimes your debit card might be run as credit, or at restaurants, they don't reconcile all of their transactions until that night or the next day. So purchases will be pending in your account. And so what does that mean? That means that you might have your balance for your checking account might be $1,000, but you have a couple pending purchases that are $45, $50 that haven't gone through and been processed yet. So how that'll show is you'll have an available balance. So you'll have your balance, but then you'll have your available balance, which will be your total balance minus any pending charges, which amounts to what you have actually in your bank account. So it's important for the most part, I know that gas stations stopped doing this, but they used to just charge you for $1 on your debit card, and that would stay $1 until like the next day when the full purchase of filling your tank would come through. That would really sneak up on you if you didn't plan for that maybe, $60 expense to come through when it was showing in your bank account as just $1 expense at the time. I think bank or gas stations don't do that anymore. I've been getting charged right after I leave. So I'm glad that they've changed that, because it would sneak up on people, it sneak up on me a lot of the time. But something that's still really, that happens a lot, is if you're eating out and you tip, they swipe your card, maybe just for the meal you paid $60. That's going to come out of your bank account right away. You swiped your debit card, $60 comes through, it's taken out of your bank account. But if you tipped, $4, $5, that's not going to come through till the next day when they enter that tip, send it through, and then it pulls out of your bank account. So you just want to kind of be aware that the money that you have in your bank account and the number that it's giving you isn't always what is actually in your bank account or will be when all the transactions are processed. Same with the deposits. You might submit a check into your bank account. A lot of the time, some banks they'll kind of front you the money until they process the check. So if you submit your paycheck, they'll give you that money right away, even though they haven't verified and processed the check. But some banks or credit unions will hold that money pending until they can verify that check is accurate. That's a good check. So just that'll, and as it says here, that'll kind of live in this outstanding deposits, this pending deposit area of your bank account. And so you just want to be aware as you're going through your bank account that, there might be pending charges, there might be pending deposits, and that you really want to look at that available balance. And if you're in person at the bank or credit union, they'll tell you what you have available, and they'll explain if there's any pending charges or any pending deposits. So again, can't stress this enough. Saving on fees and avoiding fees is so, so important. In an ideal world, managing your money at a financial institution should be free. You should never pay maintenance fees. You should never pay minimum balance fees. Don't want to pay overdraft fees. So ways you can do that is, and if you need to pull out cash, not paying ATM fees, which can really add up. So I know that credit unions in Oregon, there's a network of credit unions where if you are a customer at one credit union, you can use ATMs at any of the credit unions that are in the network and not have to pay ATM fees. Setting up direct deposit, a lot of the times a bank or financial institution will require you to set up direct deposit to avoid fees. If that's the bank or credit union you're going with, definitely set up direct deposit so you don't have to pay that maintenance fee. And honestly, if you get an overdraft and you go in and say, hey, I wasn't keeping track of it, I'm really sorry, can you reverse this fee? A lot of the times they will. They want to keep you as a customer and they want to make you happy. They're not going to do it indefinitely. What they'll probably say is, yeah, we'll reverse this fee. Maybe it's a good time to set up overdraft protection and put a little bit of money in your savings account so this doesn't happen again. But just asking and talking to them and seeing what they can do to help you is always worth it, because you'll find that a lot of the time, the folks at the bank will reverse fees or just try to do whatever they can in their power to keep you as a customer and to save you money in the end. Debit versus credit card. So again, you go to a bank, set up your checking account, you're going to get a debit card. Credit cards, a lot of banks have credit cards that you can use, or you might shop your credit card through another provider, not through your bank. But we can just go through the difference real quick. So available, debit cards available for all checking accounts as young as 13. Again, this is your actual money. So that's why when you swipe your debit card, it comes almost every time instantaneously out of your checking account. Since it's your actual money, you're not paying any interest on it. You will usually have to enter your PIN, which helps you kind of keep it secure a little bit. So if someone gets your debit card, it'll be harder for them to use your information and actually use the debit card. But if you lose your debit card or credit card, cancel it right away. And then if there's fraudulent activity, though, like I talked about earlier, it usually takes around 3 weeks to get reimbursed. But in your debit does not build your credit history at all, because you're not taking out any short-term loans and paying them back as you do with a credit card. Credit, you must be 21 or 18 with a cosigner. Again, this is borrowing from your future. So every time you swipe your credit card, you're taking out a mini loan from that credit provider that you will have to pay back in a month, or you will start paying interest on it. You'll start paying interest on any unpaid balances, and usually credit cards go on a month-to-month basis. That's their billing cycle. Easier to dispute fraudulent charges, like I said. If you have a fraudulent charge on your credit card and you report it, they will reimburse your account balance right away as they do the investigation. It builds your credit history using a credit card. So that's why we recommend everyone who wants to build credit and should build credit starts as early as possible with a credit card. But when you get a credit card, treat it as if it's your own money that you're spending. Treat it like a debit card. Pay it back each month so you're not paying interest, and keep track of how much you're spending on your credit card so you always have enough money in your checking account to pay it back. So you always have enough real money to pay it back. And then there's card rewards, which are really nice. I think there's a lot of credit cards that offer promotional periods where if you spend a certain amount of money in a 3-month period, when you first open the account, they'll give you $200 to your account balance or to your credit to your checking account. There's a lot of deals where I have one right now where if I spend at grocery stores, I get 5% back at grocery stores, which is huge when you're talking about trying to save money and balance your budget. Is if I can get 5% back at all my grocery store purchases, that's going to save me a lot of money in a year-to-year period. So now that we kind of know what goes into a budget, we know financial institutions that we can shop at and what we're kind of looking for when we're shopping financial institutions. You're going to want to create your own budget. Start thinking about your goals, your short-term, your intermediate, your long-term goals. Start prioritizing those goals, and then start creating a budget and a spending plan that'll help you meet those goals. So there's the in the workbook that I'm providing, that's where we have this goals and tools inventory sheet, a bank account review, and I think there's also, it's called a lifeline activity, where it really helps us start to chunk out our priorities as we're starting to save. And kind of, since saving is emotional and spending is emotional, creating a budget is emotional, and then creating your goals to align with your values and your emotions is really important. Awesome. Well, that's all we got here today, everybody. I really appreciate y'all coming. Bio, Lenora, and Olga, I would love to get you, oh, there's another credit card here. If you don't have a credit card, that's not bad, Bio, not at all. I think it's important to start building credit, but there's other ways to build credit that aren't credit cards. Experian, which we didn't, in a later workshop, we're going to go more into credit, so I don't want to get too much into it. But Experian, it has something called Credit Boost, which allows you, I think it's a free service through them. And what they do is they allow you to set up your bill payments, because when you pay rent, when you pay your electricity bill, when you pay your internet bill, that's not building your credit. But Experian Boost allows you to tie all those things to their service. And so when you pay through Credit Boost, you pay your bills and whatnot through Credit Boost, it increases your credit when it otherwise wouldn't. So that's a way to build your credit without getting a credit card, because I think a lot of people, credit cards are sometimes tough to navigate. It's easy to let your credit balance get out of hand and start paying interest on it. So if you kind of want to avoid that, using Credit Boost is a really good tool. And then you also said, if you use a personal spreadsheet, how do you make sure you record every expense? That's really tough. I think opening, so if you have mobile banking, Lenora, I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah, I don't know why that would be. I think whenever we open credit accounts, it can decrease your credit, but over time you'll recoup that. Maybe that happens with Experian Boost as well. But back to your question, Bio, I would say a good strategy is if you have mobile banking, if you have an online banking app, maybe each day or each week. So at the end of the day or at the end of the week, you open up your banking app, click your checking account, go through all your line item expenses, and then transfer those to your Excel spreadsheet into your budget. But then again, that's why Mint is convenient. But if you don't want your data to be out there, I understand that. But Mint automatically does all that for you. But if you are doing it with Excel or on a pen and paper, you'll just want to you'll have to do all that yourself, but mobile banking makes it really easy. Or you can go to your bank and get a bank statement for the month and do it that way. Awesome. So I think I got someone's email here. Trying to find it. There we go. Yeah, Bio, I'll send you that spreadsheet so you have it. And also Olga, awesome. Let me just make sure I save these. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. So I want to be able to get you all that spreadsheet. Well, I really appreciate y'all coming and attending and listening. Once I send you my email, feel free to ask me any other questions. I'll send you all three that email with that spreadsheet, and then you can ask me any questions that you want, any follow-up. I'm happy to help. I'm here to answer any questions that you have after.
Jasper, thank you so much. While you're doing that, I just want to pop on. Thank folks for joining while you're still here. Wanted to ask you to take our survey. Can be entered to win some gift cards, and I'll post that here. And then if you have more questions, you can always reach out to us at Fix It Fair, and we'll get you to the right place as well. We have tons more resources, including more financial beginnings workshops will be coming up in the near future as well.
All right. Well, I got everyone's email. You can expect that Excel spreadsheet from me in the next 30 minutes. I'll send it to you.
Great. Thank you, Olga. Jasper, if you want to hold on just a minute, can let the attendees leave and then want to chat with you just a bit.
Yeah, definitely.
Great. Great. Thanks, Olga.